everyone, and welcome to another week of PR News Live. I'm Nicole Schumann. I'm a reporter here at PR News, and I'd like to thank you all for joining us. If you have any questions today, please remember you can pop them into the comments at any time, and we'll get to them throughout the chat. If we're busy chatting, we'll get to them at the end. So welcome. Today, I'd also like to welcome Dave Skena. He's Chief Marketing Officer and Global Director of Brand at Krispy Kreme. Very excited about this guest today. Dave answered the call from Krispy Kreme in November 2018 to serve as CMO. And in less than 2 years, he's installed and mobilized PR as the driving force of brand building and a measurable driver of business results. So Dave flipped the script at Krispy Kreme regarding traditional marketing in the category, putting a premium on insights and creative-driven earned media strategies that consistently generate widespread coverage to drive the funnel top to bottom without television, radio, and out-of-home advertising, all of which Dave eliminated from the marketing mix. So today we're going to talk with Dave about Krispy Kreme's latest experiential efforts, including its plans for Halloween and Election Day. So welcome, Dave. We're glad to have you here.
Thanks very much, Nicole. It's great to be here. Thank you.
Great. First, I'd like to talk about an article featured in PR News this week about brands and the upcoming election. I celebrated today by wearing my voting shirt.
Oh, nice. I like it.
I don't remember Schoolhouse.
Of course. Are you kidding me? Yeah, I won't sing it all for you, but yes, I remember.
I'm just a Bill, but hopefully after this today, we're going to take our lunch and go to early voting. Fingers crossed the lines are not too long. So there's a lot of great stuff with brands that are doing with the upcoming election. A lot of brands are taking this time to be extra clever and to promote positivity and patriotism surrounding the election. Jib Jab is back with those funny big head videos that you might remember from years past. They used to work on the Elf Yourself campaign. And now they have a Go Vote campaign, which is pretty fun. Lotrimin, which you might recognize as a foot care brand, stepped up to honor those waiting in line for hours at the polls. And Smirnoff launched the Don't Drink and Debate tongue-in-cheek ad campaign during the presidential debates, which if you saw the ads was pretty funny. Brands have certainly stepped up this year to promote voter registration and encouragement to visit the polls. And now Krispy Kreme will be doing its part on Election Day to keep everyone fed and moving. So Dave, can you explain the campaign for Election Day?
Sure. First of all, props to Lotrimin for stepping up. That was clever. I love that. We, on Election Day, it's a little bit more straightforward. I mean, simply put, we were looking at how do we encourage our own employees to go vote, our own team members. And we were having lots of discussions about that, links to how to register to vote, make a plan, how do we provide people the opportunity to work with their manager to ensure they have time to do that. So it started out as that way. And then we progressed that conversation of what about everyone else? What can we do? And while participating and preserving Western democracy should be its own reward, that plus a donut we thought would be extra good. A little more inducement. And then to kind of put it over the edge, I early voted her in Florida. We did get a sticker, by the way. But some places people aren't. We heard that. And so we were hopeful that for folks who maybe voted earlier, their polling place didn't have a sticker, that is, it's kind of the adult equivalent of getting your spelling test on the refrigerator kind of thing. And we wanted to make sure we could do that for people who maybe didn't get theirs when they did vote or something like that. And so anyway, that's the program. We wanted to put it out there and kind of give people a little bit of a sweet treat for doing their part for the nation.
That's awesome. I mean, I'm excited about it. I'm excited to get free food at any time. But the Krispy Kreme donuts are definitely a special treat. And yeah, in terms of the voting stickers, I was surprised to know that there were either shortages or places just didn't have them this year because of the different ways that people are voting due to the pandemic. So, how are you guys getting the word out so people know about this promotion?
Well, folks like you, first of all, a lot of the things we did, as you mentioned at the top, are we absolutely count on the media to tell folks what we're up to. And if you're doing something that's genuinely benevolent and genuinely altruistic, they're generally willing to spread the word. that helps a lot. And then, of course, we do use all of our own channels, all of our social channels to do that. We found social media for us to be a highly productive way to get the word out. It's where people are spending a lot of time. And it's also something where you can be so targeted with it that you can really hit radiuses right around a store. And so it's been a very efficient vehicle for us, and we do that as well. So the combination of paid media, owned channels, and earned media have really been the key. And I put earned media at the top of the list. And so the key to doing something for earned media is you have to have something that actually earns it. And that's what we try to do. So we try to do things that are generous to our consumers, are culturally relevant, are things people want to talk about. And we have the benefit of being an incredibly buzzworthy brand, because who doesn't want a Krispy Kreme donut? So it's a product that has a natural magnetism to it, and people enjoy hearing about.
That's awesome. And it makes a lot of sense in terms of utilizing social media and the earned media. I live in New York, and a couple of weeks ago, I went and ventured into Manhattan to go to the new flagship outside of Times Square.
What did you think?
It was awesome.
Yes, that's great.
Even if you don't eat donuts, it was a really cool experience. And everyone was taking photos, and everyone was sharing them on Instagram or Twitter or WhatsApp, whatever they use, because you would go in and you know this, you've probably been there. But you would go in and you would actually see like the conveyor belt and the donuts going, down this line and, through the fryer. And then there's this waterfall of glaze, and the people working, behind the scenes there too, the employees were awesome. They were, waving and posing for pictures. And it was a really, it's not like a huge factory or anything, but it was a really cool interactive experience that I think is really cool for the brand.
Yeah, well, thanks a lot. We worked awfully hard on it. So many of our key equities are sort of dialed up to the maximum extent in that store, kind of turned it up to 11, and whether it's the hot light, which is the biggest in the world, or the glazer that you mentioned, which is the tallest waterfall of glaze in the world. It's much bigger than our normal ones. Or, of course, you got to see the donuts being made right in front of you. I mean, I think that's what retail in general has to do a great job of if they want to remain relevant, is giving people something they can't get anywhere else. And certainly the Times Square store does that, but so do all our factory shops. So
yeah, and I was surprised, even though it's a pandemic. I mean, it's New York, so there was a line, because of course there's a line for everything, which is good for you guys knowing that it's popular. But I have to say the social distancing spacing, there was, great people working, with Krispy Kreme to make sure everyone was staying, in their little spaces and going in when they needed to, and everything was super safe. And the reward was getting your donut at the end. So that was actually, I ended up getting 6, but yeah. So, that value add there. So it was a really good experience. But in talking about earned media and, experiential type things, I think that is the real big win for you guys. The other question I just have about the election giveaways is, how did you guys get access to stickers?
Well, I know there are a lot of shortages. I don't know if that's because these election sites didn't order them or what. We did have to call several vendors before we finally found one that had them. But when we did, we were able to get them within a week or two. So it wasn't, so I'm not sure what the difficulty is with a lot of the local election areas, but we know that that's a thing. But it was not all that hard to source them. We had to call around and, order a bunch of them and have them all go to one place before we could ship them out to our own stores. So that made it a little tricky, and maybe that makes it hard for people, but they were around.
So basically, if you can dream it, you can do it. So that's a great thing. And I'd also like to talk to you a little bit about this year's Halloween celebrations. As we all know, Halloween is a thriving billion-dollar industry, but with COVID precautions, it's bound to be anything but a traditional Halloween this year. We've seen a lot of brands, having to pivot messaging and activities while keeping families and revelers in mind, keeping people safe. How is Krispy Kreme treating Halloween differently this year?
Yeah, actually, very differently. I mean, Halloween's a big holiday for us. Obviously, candy's the big star of Halloween every year with trick or treat. But when people have parties and things like that, there's a lot of our Halloween donuts are consumed there. People purchase them. So, we started off with a little bit of worry, but then we thought about, well, how can we take the things we've done all year through the pandemic, these acts of joy we've been doing, whether it was giving donuts to medical workers, celebrating graduates, things. Be Sweet Saturdays where we had people give them to a neighbor, and we said, what if trick or treat gets canceled this year because of the pandemic? So this was a while ago. This was probably early summer, and we wanted to have a plan ready in case it was. And because we thought these kids especially have had so much taken from them this year, that what can we do to give a little something back? And so that's where the idea of reverse trick-or-treating was born, which is, okay, if it can't be about everyone going out in a costume, being close to each other and trick-or-treating in some places, well, what can we do to kind of turn that on its head and say, hey, buy a dozen donuts, we'll give you another dozen to share with the neighbor. You leave it, you ditch dong ding and or ding dong ditch on their doorstep. Ring the doorbell, leave the donuts there and leave, or let them know we don't care, with a special sweeter treat dozen that you're displaying right now. So we're kind of turning this on its head and using Halloween as a chance to be generous with folks you haven't seen for a while, people you'd love to see but can't because of COVID and so on. And so that's where the idea was born. That's how we developed it. And so when the CDC said, this is a moderate to high risk activity, we said, we're doing it. And these things, when you're giving away product at a very low price, it obviously comes with some financial risk, but all year long, we felt like this is a different year. This is a year to be very generous, a year to live out your brand to the maximum extent possible, and hope that consumers will reward you for that generosity. And so far they have.
I love that. I love that Frankenstein donut. I think that's adorable.
Yeah.
I don't know who's in charge of designing donuts, but they did a really good job.
Yeah, that's we have an innovation team that spends a lot of time on that, and they did do a fantastic job on Halloween. Wait till you see holiday. It's great. We've got a lot more in the pipeline.
Oh boy. No, I was surprised, because when you think of Krispy Kreme, you think of the traditional, original donut, just the glaze, which are my favorite and probably everyone's favorite. But even at the Manhattan location, at the flagship, they have a special big apple donut, and it was, I forget, caramel frosting or something, but it looked like a little apple, and it came in this fancy box. And I was just like, you don't think about designing donut. You see all the cake shows on TV and those sorts of things, and cupcakes, but you don't think about donuts. And I thought that was really smart and eye-catching for people.
Yeah. For the record, that was a red candy apple mirror glaze filled with a sweet apple filling. But yes. Just for the clarification.
I just saw it, and I thought it was very pretty for a donut.
In New York, I mean, when New York comes back, and it will, right now traffic's down there a lot, but there's so much tourism that goes through there. And that donut and that box and everything about that big apple donut was designed and intentioned to be shared. You mentioned how we do our marketing and how we, don't do a lot of traditional media, or any traditional media really. And part of it's word of mouth too. So you have to do things that, again, it's earned media with folks like yourself, but it's also earned media with consumers. I mean, if you earn a share, if you get a like, that's pretty good. If you get a share, that's great. If you have them sharing it, their own posts that they make themselves, well, now you're really onto something. And the Big Apple Donut's an example of something where we want to provide a lot of customer wonder, a lot of wow. And, I guarantee anywhere in the world you're coming to New York, it's kind of hard not to buy that donut and instantly Instagram it to all your friends back home.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I did a big story, and I got a lot of comments on it. So you got some earned media there for sure.
Yeah, I love it.
And as I was saying about the Halloween, looking at Halloween donuts, I mean, you guys are definitely depending on a lot of word of mouth. Are there, other ways that you guys are communicating, let people know about the promotion?
Absolutely. I mean, Halloween is one of our more, call it traditional LTOs, the way it's supported. So we do a lot of earned media outreach, but we also have a lot of paid social. We're making sure we are consistently through the entire month of October reaching out to people so that you're giving them lots of content to share. And we produce a fair amount of content. I mean, I would say for something like Halloween, where it's running all month, you'll have up to a dozen different assets of different types: carousels, videos, static shots, and so on, so that it's easy for people to share, so that there's enough repetition for folks we know have been with us before. We also, I talked about our own channels before. We get a lot of engagement through our organic posts as well. But then we also do have a pretty good number of loyalty members who get our emails and get to see what we're offering. And we tend to make those as shareable as possible too. And we do get a lot of people who forward our emails around, especially when there's an offer, but even when there's not.
Yeah, email seems to have had a real resurgence in looking at email newsletters and those sorts of things. So I know people are always looking out for deals and just interesting stuff that brands are doing. So, I mean, that's awesome. We actually had a question pop up from a viewer right now that's wondering, what is up for Thanksgiving?
Come on. It's not supposed to be, scoops on this show, I didn't think. And I can tell you that you will not be disappointed. What hints can I give without spoiling it so I don't get everyone on my team and all of our agencies mad at me? I will tell you this. Coming up in November, a few weeks' time, there will be something new to the world that no one has ever seen from Krispy Kreme. And it will make you salivate for sure. And you will want to go to Krispy Kreme and enjoy it. And it's something we've never had before. And I think it's something that plays to all of our equities. And if I say any more, I'm going to get in trouble with people. So that's it. That's what I'm going to say about it. I think it was a good question. But we have a lot of stuff coming up, and holiday as well. I think we have some really fun new innovations at holiday as well.
No, that's great. And I think that's what people need, especially this year. People might just think, oh, it's just a donut shop. But it's these little things that I think make people feel a lot better this year. I can't stop watching that TikTok video with the guy in the ocean spray cranberry.
Great.
I think that was probably one of the highlights of this year, which I guess marketing or advertising wise, maybe morale wise, I don't know, but it made me smile, and I know a lot of other people as well, which is really
in a year of murder hornets, twin hurricanes, global pandemics, and everything else. A guy on a skateboard talking about cranberry juice is a pretty big win. And I would also say that we had this whole conversation, just what you mentioned, Nicole, at the start of the pandemic. Well, what can we do? We're proud of what we do, but we were very aware we can't do anything that directly helps. We don't make respirators or ventilators or surgical gowns or surgical masks. But we realized pretty early on, our purpose is to share joy. And that's the role we had to play. And so what we've been trying to do, and what I hope lots of companies do, is figure out how they can live out their purpose, because most people have pretty beneficent or altruistic kind of brand purposes, and now's the time. And it's not convenient to take the risk of being super generous when you're worried about your sales and have some existential worries about your brand. But if that's what your brand's all about, now's the time. You have to do it. And I hope anybody watching who may have a brand like that considers doing something extraordinary, considers doing something that's a little scary, but kind, because it's all those little acts of kindness that I think add up to a lot of the help we all need right now.
Yeah, we actually just got a question from Dario, which might relate to this, asking what CSR initiatives have you rolled out in the context of COVID? I know you mentioned essential workers. I don't know if you guys have provided any initiatives in that way. spreading joy through these donuts is as great as it is. So, but if you did have anything, just curious, if you wanted to share.
That, I mean, that is a good example. So a lot of them have been these marketing examples, but to more on corporate social responsibility, you know, there's a much longer, bigger structural conversation to have there that we really started having this year. We had started having it already, and then when a lot of the the horrible events that happened this summer that gave rise to, I think, an awakening for a lot of folks. We did a lot around D&I internally that we're working on. We're not done with it yet, and so we're not going to pound our chest and say we're there before we're done with everything. But there's that. Those kinds of initiatives that have gone on, not actually strictly speaking in response to COVID, but just in response to a lot of other things going on in society with George Floyd and so on. So, and we're also looking in the supply chain, and I think some of the areas where we're thinking, how can we do better with ingredients and sourcing and things like that aren't specifically related to COVID. To her question on COVID, it's how do we do things that are kind for others or who are directly impacted by COVID, not maybe with the sickness, but and those are the kinds of little acts of joy we can do, whether it's around giveaways to medical workers, or just trying to be a bright spot for graduating seniors, or trying to find a way to treat your neighbor to something nice. That are those moments of human connection that we can tell people we care in our own small way, and hopefully have them pay it forward to somebody else, because there's a lot of people who want to show others that they care too. So a lot of promotions have been around, here's a dozen for you to go do something kind for someone else. And I think that's probably a little bit of a pivot off of the specifics on corporate social responsibility agenda, which is a really big, important question. But those are some of the things we've done to live out our brand during this time in COVID.
That's awesome. I'm glad to hear that. We only have a couple more minutes. Then we gotta let you go. The time always goes by so fast on these calls, but this has been really good. And I think something a lot of people that are watching can learn from. You guys having to pivot and come up with these different ideas. You're a big corporation, but what are some best practices from this, or some ideas? What can smaller brands learn from this, to help them out?
I think there's a lot in our playbook that can work as well or better for small brands, and I hope I hope some folks with those types of brands are watching, because word of mouth, doing something so provocative it creates word of mouth, is something that's an extremely local, personal thing. And so brands that are either smaller because they're regional or in pockets nationally, I think could benefit from that. Do something that gets people talking. Do things that enable people to share what they love about your brand easily on their social channels. That's something we think about. Are you providing people content that they're ready to share? And some of these things may sound sort of basic, but it's the right picture, it's the right caption, it's something where you can make them proud to identify with your brand and start sharing it via word of mouth. I mean, that is really important. Also, I would encourage them. We're blessed to be able to do it at more national media level. But if you look at Krispy Kreme, our store footprint touches maybe a third of the country. I mean, we have less than 400 shops in the country versus other folks like us have maybe 10,000 shops. But we're able to get national coverage because we do some things that are interesting and provocative and people want to talk about. And so I think at a local level, I would also be working on encourage smaller brands to, if you do something newsworthy, do your own outreach to media. I think people underestimate how valuable PR is. I think people underestimate how much media companies are looking for positive content about products or brands that the people who watch their channels will be interested in. And frankly, I'm glad some of the folks we compete with a little bit do underestimate the value of that. And we view it as something front and center, not a side job, to go out and look for earned media and start with it in mind of how will consumers become aware of this if I don't have all the tools of a large you mentioned we were a large corporation, but there are those much, much larger, with billions of dollars to spend on advertising. Well, if you don't have that, how are you going to punch above your weight? Earned media is a good way to punch above your weight. I think social media continues to be a way to punch above your weight. It can be highly localized and affordable on any budget. And then word of mouth has always really been the best way to get the word out. When you do something that people want to talk about, then you will attract more people to what you have to offer.
That's awesome. And definitely, yeah, I think any organization of any size can really take away from this. So thank you for that. We appreciate it. I do have one more question. Of course, I have to ask this. What is your favorite donut?
Oh, absolutely, original glazed. I know that sounds a little basic, but if you have an original glazed donut fresh off the line, that it's like a life-changing event for some people. I mean, it's really good. It's great when you watch people describe it too. Though they get so creative in their descriptions, biting into a cloud, or just this one of a kind, like melts in your mouth kind of experience. And it is so great to have a fresh, hot, original glazed donut off the line. So I know you get a lot of different answers on that one, but that's by far my biggest treat.
That's good. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue with that. So hard to argue with an original. Well, thank you so much, Dave. I know you're really busy. I appreciate you taking the time today, and I'm sure our viewers do as well. Thank you to all of our viewers for taking the time out of your day to watch us. We love having you on. I wanted to let everybody know about an upcoming webinar that we're having on November 17th. It's titled Communicating Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Actions to External Stakeholders. If you are interested in creating and promoting DEI efforts, this is a great event for you. You can sign up at prnewsonline.com/webinars. We'll be putting that in the chat. We are taking next week off because it's the day after the election, and I think we're going to have a lot to talk about. So our team is going to be busy providing coverage after that. Thank you all again. And remember, go vote. We have about 6 days now. So here we go.
And stop by today for a donut. Thank you, Nicole. And thanks to the people who asked a couple questions. That was fun. And thanks for everyone who watched.
Thanks, Dave. And thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.